We've been beating around the bush. Let's just get straight to it. It is time to get to business and answer the question everybody wants to know. April 5th, we will crown our first national champion since Virginia back in 2019. Here are the latest odds from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Gonzaga, the overwhelming favorite at plus 200. Baylor, plus 500. Illinois coming off that wild Big Ten championship run, plus 600. Michigan, as I stated a minute ago, uncertain on the status of Isaiah Livers, at least as we record here, at plus 750. Iowa, plus 1,600. Houston, plus 1,800. Ohio State and Alabama, the SEC champs there on the back end, plus 2,100. And then after those teams, you get into real long shot territory. So, guys, as I just said, Gonzaga and Baylor really have separated themselves from the field entering championship week and coming out of championship week. The story has been all year. Do you think Baylor, Gonzaga, Baylor, who do you like? Who's your favorite? Do you think now that we actually have the bracket in front of us, now that we have these 68 teams plus the 4 that are sitting on standby at home, is it still Baylor, Gonzaga? Will the national champion come from one of those two teams? John, I'll go ahead and start with you.
No, because Illinois has joined the party. And, I remember watching the movie Carlito's Way with Al Pacino in the late 1980s. And, there's a scene where Pacino has to get himself out of a situation on a pool hall and he yells out of a bathroom stall, "Here comes the pain." And pain is coming for Illinois' opponents. Illinois, to me, and I don't want to play spoiler here, but I'm going to say, is the team I'm picking to win a national championship because of the mental stamina that this team has and has displayed. You saw it in the Big Ten tournament. So I think really all season long, we thought it was a 2-horse race, but the Illini and with some of the young freshmen that they have on their roster have joined the top tier.
Rashad, before we get to your pick, I have one follow-up for John here really quick on Illinois. You talk about the mental toughness. How about the fact that you have all those emotional games down the stretch, some without Ayo Dosunmu, their All-American point guard. How do you think playing without Ayo Dosunmu really toughened them up, not only for the Big Ten tournament last week, but going forward with this NCAA tournament?
Well, Aaron, I remember texting with Brad Underwood the day that they played Wisconsin without Ayo Dosunmu, and he just texted me back, Curbelo time. And Andre Curbelo has been a revelation for Illinois, and you'll appreciate this because I know you obviously have UConn near and dear to your heart. It's the 10-year anniversary of when Connecticut won a national championship with Kemba Walker at the helm. And there's been a lot of talk this year about Ayo Dosunmu being a Kemba Walker light for Illinois. But if you remember back in 2011, Shabazz Napier was also a critical piece next to Kemba Walker as a freshman. Andre Curbelo is filling that ancillary role. And here's another thing when we look at Illinois. Adam Miller, somebody who doesn't obviously, always become the name in bold print, is a key piece here to monitor in the NCAA tournament. This season, when Adam Miller scores in double figures, the Illini are 10-1.
I'll tell you, I love my UConn Huskies, but with due respect to Alex Oriaki, their starting center in 2011, he was no Kofi Cockburn. That's a different that guy's cut from a different cloth. Rashad, do you believe that it is Gonzaga, Baylor in the field, or have other teams entered that conversation?
No, I'm going to go Zags here. I just think when you look at what Gonzaga brings to the table, they're great defensively. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They're well coached. And I love the play of Suggs and Corey. And Drew Timme is as productive of player of anybody in the country. But not only that, when you look into the fabric of the NCAA, you always have to follow the guard play. Yep. And Gonzaga has a lot of guard play, and that's why I'm so confident in their ability. But you're going to hear the mid-major school, they don't play anybody, they don't play this, they don't play that. But I don't think Gonzaga fits in that narrative, and here's why. They have some quality non-conference wins. They beat Auburn, they beat West Virginia, they beat Virginia, and we all missed that December 5th matchup they were supposed to have against Baylor. But I tell you this, Gonzaga is one of those teams that want all the smoke, per se. So I'm going to go Zags here because I just like what they bring to the table.
Let me ask you this, Rashad, as a former player. You mentioned that they played Virginia earlier this season. The thing that stood out to me when this bracket came out, the number 2, 3, and 4 seed in their region, they actually beat all of them. Iowa, Kansas, Virginia, by double digits, Rashad. As a former player or as a guy that's now in coaching, would you be worried at all about the fact that they could see a team that they beat pretty convincingly, a letdown factor at all in that Sweet 16 Elite Eight?
Yeah, you'll have a little doubt there because you don't want your team to be a little lax. Hey, resting on their morals per se. Hey, we beat these guys earlier in the season. What I would do as a coach is reassure my team, hey, these guys lost to us and we beat them convincingly. So let's make sure we do what we did prior to get this win. Also, again, the guard play for me. The guard play for me is tremendous. What Gonzaga brings to the table. Suggs is a top 5 pick. Corey is a lottery pick. Drew Timmy's an NBA player. They have a lot of depth. I just think it's a confidence builder to look at that bracket and say, we beat 3 of these teams already, and let's continue that. Let's not give them any breathing room.
All right, let's kind of stay kind of the same conversation, but flip it the other way. How about a team near the top of the odds board, a number 1 or number 2 seed that you think is overrated and could be susceptible to an upset? I'll actually throw it back to you, Rashad. Start with you.
Wow, I hate to say this, guys. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and it's really paining me to go here and say this, but I got to say it. I think Michigan is the team that's more susceptible to take a loss. Obviously, the injury to Isaiah Livers is a huge blow. It leaves a huge void to fill. Michigan has played well without him, but I just believe to get far in March, you need all of your soldiers. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on the point guard, Mike Smith. He's a tremendous player. I loved his game the other day against Maryland, 18 points, 15 assists, but he's going to have those type of historical moments a lot more times than just one game in order to avoid early elimination. There's going to be a lot on Mike Smith's shoulders. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if he's going to be ready for that, man. I'm sorry, Michigan, but I think you guys fall first.
Go ahead, John. The floor is yours.
No, I agree with obviously what, Rashad said about Michigan. And, I said, yesterday, after watching the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament on Saturday, that, the biggest thing that was really of interest to my eyeballs when the bracket came out was who is Michigan going to play in the round of 32? Because the round of 32 for me is always where the tournament officially starts because the landscape has changed. Because if you win that game, you get an extra 4 or 5 days of media attention. You get an extra 4 or 5 days of being in the limelight. It's been a game changer, especially if you're a mid-major. So when I saw that Michigan is either going to have Will Wade and LSU, who almost beat Alabama on Sunday, or a very well-coached team by Mark Schmidt out of the Atlantic 10 at St. Bonaventure, that is a dynamite matchup for Michigan in the round of 32. And to me, I think it's clear that they're the most vulnerable of the number 1 seeds. I don't think there's any debate about it.
No, the Isaiah Livers injury, I think, is a game changer. I agree with both of you on this one. I'm supposed to ask you about your national championship picks next, but we already both got, you two both gave them. So real quick, I'll kind of flip it the other way. Illinois, John, plus 600 at FanDuel Sportsbook. What is your biggest concern for Illinois? They're your pick. So you like them, obviously, but what is one concern that you might have about them as the bracket unfolds?
Aaron, and this isn't a cop-out answer. I've got complete, obviously, confidence in Illinois. Now, the second game that Illinois is going to have, regardless of its opponent, is going to be a meat grinder because Georgia Tech and Loyola Chicago, that first-round game really should be held in an octagon instead of a basketball court because when you think about what the style of play is going to be like. But with that said, I think things are set up pretty well for Illinois to get to a situation where we'll get to Indianapolis. But, guys, I named all the regions after some of the steakhouses here in Indianapolis because, when you're in quarantine, you'll do anything, obviously, to try to pass the time. So Illinois' region, to me, is the Steak and Shake region because I'm looking at it outside my hotel window, but I can't order because of Tier 2 protocols. But we'll get to that later in the show. We're just building up to it. But, you look at the toughness potentially in this region right now in the bottom right of your bracket. We have Illinois, you have the Georgia Tech, Loyola Chicago component. You have obviously Oklahoma State. There's Tennessee. There's also Houston and Kelvin Sampson on the bottom, along with Rutgers against Clemson, a game where the first to 40 is going to win. I mean, this is a dynamite region from a toughness perspective, the Steak and Shake region.
I like it.
All right, Rashad, I don't know what region Gonzaga's in. I'm going to call it the West. John, if you want to – with the St. Elmo's region. Okay. So the St. Elmo's region, Gonzaga is not only the top seed, but your pick to win the national championship. Rashad, what would concern you if you do have a concern? We know you like them, but what would be that one concern that you have?
You know, for me is payback. I look at Kansas. You know, when I look at the West Side, I look at Kansas, and I feel that this team hasn't played necessarily well early on. But I just feel like there's something inside of these kids that want to play Gonzaga again. And that really scares me. They don't have the top tier players per se that Kansas usually has every year in, year out. But now I think collectively they can put it together and really give Gonzaga a scare. I can see that.
I'll just say before we move on, I really didn't want to pick Gonzaga prior to the tournament. I thought it felt too obvious. It felt too on brand. Oh, of course, the guy that follows college basketball picked the undefeated team. But I'll tell you, they are my pick as well at plus 200 in the FanDuel Sportsbook. And I just look at them, and what I really think with Gonzaga is they were a team that I thought if they were going to be susceptible to an upset, it was going to come in the Sweet 16, in the Elite Eight, when the pressure is mounting. But I just feel like if they can get to a Final Four, I think they're in great shape. I think mentally, as we talked about the mental toughness, and we'll get into it more later, I just don't see them getting to the Final Four and then losing. And so, as Rashad just mentioned, I do think that the fact that there's some familiarity with some of the teams that they're playing, I don't see the team in their region that is ultimately going to beat them. Virginia, who they play in the Sweet 16, is going to be arriving late to the NCAA tournament. Kansas, I think, is a little bit limited offensively. So Gonzaga is my pick to win the national championship along with Rashad. I guess my cause for concern would just be the pressure that comes with being an undefeated team in the national, competing for a national championship.